Thank you. That was beautifully read, both of you. Good morning, friends. It's a joy to be here. You know, this topic this morning about that the intellect alone, the mind alone, cannot bring us to God is very important in the age that we're in right now. I think any of us looking around see a world that has a lot of confusion in it, and a lot of people suffering because they don't have a clear pathway toward what they need to do in order to find their own God-given inner happiness. It's always there. Our joy is inside, and it is eternal. Nothing can take it away. But our attention can take our minds away from what we have inside. And so the cure for that is that we have to also engage our heart's energy in our spiritual search, or basically in anything that we're doing. Swami Kriyananda often said that wisdom is not of the mind alone. Wisdom is a combination of feeling and intellect, or feeling and pure discrimination. And when those two are combined, then you have something that can perceive, not just the mind sees the outside, the mind, the senses, all you can see is the outside of me. All you can see is the outside of this. We can't see inside. But the heart can feel, the heart has a certain kind of a wisdom that is much deeper than the intellect alone. And all of the great teachers tell us that the heart has to become engaged in our spiritual search. Probably the most intellectual of all of the line of gurus is Sri Yukteswar. You know, Master paints a picture of him as a teacher that you didn't want to stray out of line when he was around. He was very strong, and Master waited for, when he first met Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar proclaimed his eternal love to him, and then Master said he waited for almost 30 years for that to come back again. Finally, when Master went back to India in 1936, he basically said, Sri Yukteswar, I know that you love me, but my human ears long to hear you say it. And Sri Yukteswar said, do you really need me to take my deepest feelings and put them into words? And I think Yogananda probably nodded his head and said yes. I mean, it's a pretty common desire for all of us to hear that somebody that we love loves us in return. And then, of course, Sri Yukteswar proclaimed his eternal love. But here this kind of strong inward semi-fierce teacher, really on the inside, he was soft and filled with love. We heard from others that when he would come, he was one way with those who came to him for training. He was very strict and he was making sure that the training was thorough. But if you hadn't come to him for training, he was like a teddy bear. He often visited the home of a friend of ours, and his mother told us this story, that when Sri Yukteswar would come to their home, the home of Tulsi Bose, when he would come there, he would have the children sitting on his lap, and his pockets were full of candy, and he would be laughing and playing with them and joking. And so you get a very different picture of Sri Yukteswar when he wasn't in the role that he had been given of especially training Yogananda for his great mission. He was filled with love. He said, you can't take one step on the spiritual path without love. So we have to awaken that heart quality that resides within us, or we won't really get very far. The mind, of course, the intellect has its own place. Imagine if you're trying to get to the moon, you can't get to the moon by driving there. But a car is very helpful to get you to your college, to get your education, to get you to become an astronaut so that you can get on the rocket that will take you there. So the intellect does have a part in our spiritual search. We have to do what we can to strengthen the mind. But if it's the mind alone, as Master, or as Jesus was saying in the Bible, if it begins to just focus on petty little rules and behaviors and misses the essence, it just can't get there. We had a friend who studied to become a rabbi. He quit before he quit like 3 months before he would have been, I don't know, whether you ordain a rabbi, however a rabbi becomes a rabbi officially. He quit 3 months before that because it had become dry. One of his teachers, professors, somebody asked him if the temple of Israel, which had been destroyed, if that came out of the heavens and landed on earth, would you accept it as the temple of Israel? He said, no, I would have to go and measure it to make sure that it complied to the exact measurements listed in the Bible for the temple of Israel before I would believe that that's what it was. So that kind of dry, intellectual, and it's not one religion or another, that kind of mindset that sees just data and precision and exactitude, but there's no heart quality there. It can never really perceive truth. There's a beautiful story about Ananda Ma. Many of her disciples considered her to be God incarnate, and I think everybody who knew her felt that way too. But many of her disciples felt that she was not really a person. She was God's compassion that had condensed into human form. So there was a man who was very attracted to her, became a disciple, a follower, but he was upset by the fact that Ananda Ma seemed to just travel here, there, everywhere. She would just, in the middle of anything, she would just kind of get up and leave, and those who were following her had to follow along. So he had this mental kind of judgment of her being so restless. Why can't she just sit still for a little while? Why does she have to move around so much? Why is she so restless if she's supposed to be this great soul? So Ananda Ma invited him and a few other disciples to go on this trip to this kind of remote area. And they were there the next morning after they arrived. She said, well, let's have a picnic. And everybody thought that's a good idea. So they prepared a picnic basket, and they went out, they spread the blanket by this beautiful lake. They spread the blanket out, they took the food out, and Ananda said, it's time to leave. Well, you can imagine this guy who's already judgmental about her restlessness. Now he's getting denied food. So he's really upset now. And so he's really complaining, we can't leave, we just came here, and why do we have to leave? And Anandamayi Ma just said, well, stay if you want, but I'm leaving. And so they packed up. And she was walking. She went 200 or 300 yards and just stopped under a tree. And when she stopped, a little baby bird fluttered down at her feet, fell out of the tree, and was dying. She asked a boy to pick it up and hold it up to her in front of her. And the little bird looked at her and fluttered its wings and then died. And she said, before we came, I heard its soul calling to me. It knew that soul, little soul, knew that it was going to leave this earth very soon, but it wanted my darshan before it left, and that's why we came here. So that's the difference between the intellect alone and compassion combined with it. We have to awaken our heart quality. That the music you both sang, thank you again, that's such a beautiful, heartfelt melody and words. One of the ways to develop heart quality is just that. Sing songs that have heart quality. That's in large part why we chant. Swami Kriyananda, when he was first with Yoganandaji, Master told him, you're too intellectual. You have to develop heart quality. And Swami said he had a genius intellect, a genius mind, but at that stage in his life, he tended to be critical of other people and intellectually, as he said, a little intellectually proud. And it was only when he found Master that he found somebody that he would really agree to follow. Up until that time, he couldn't find anyone that was wise enough. Anyway, Master told him, you're too intellectual. You've got to develop devotion. Well, Swamiji was a very good example when we hear something, advice that resonates with us, especially from somebody that's wise. So Swami started chanting 3-4 hours a day, singing melodies that would awaken the heart energy, awaken the love. Love is the power of attraction in the universe. And so awakening our love connects us to the love of God, and then that attractive power is what will draw us into unity. So we've got to awaken that love and turn all of our desires, all of the restlessness, as we heard in the affirmation or the reading for the affirmation, all those subsidiary desires, we need to rechannel them into the desire for liberation, the desire for unity with God. And so bringing them together with that. So chanting is one way. Another way is to serve, especially those who are, I don't know, I don't want to say unfortunate, because everybody gets exactly the right karma. So everybody is going through something that is going to help them develop spiritually. But serve those that you can serve purely. Children, for example. If you serve children, why does service help? Because the reason that we don't have heart quality is if we think about ourselves, our energy contracts. When we think about others, our energy expands. When the energy expands, heart quality is a natural part of that. So we need to allow our energy to expand, but also direct it toward the higher aspects of love. There was a beautiful book, its title, I won't tell you much about the book, but its title was Shaped by Saints. And it was the story of a friend of ours, Devi Mukherjee, and how he went from saint to saint to saint. But he did that because he wanted their magnetism to shape his life. So by associating in any way that you can with those who love God, it will magnetically awaken your own love for God. So serve, chant, sing beautiful music, have beautiful things around you, uplifting environment. But most of all, the path is an inward path. And if we really want to awaken devotion, awaken love, then daily in meditation, we have to not just intellectually express our love, not just with a prayer, oh, I love you, or a chant, door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. We can chant those beautiful words that are filled with devotion and longing, and we can chant the words and be thinking about what we're going to have for breakfast. So just doing something with the mind is not enough. We have to engage the heart quality. We have to engage our little love with a yearning for connection with the divine. And these outer ways help, but the most important way is in meditation. Never have a meditation that you don't try to awaken the feeling, not the intellect, the feeling of love for the divine or the feeling of yearning for the divine, because that is the rocket. All the rest may take the astronaut to the rocket, but love and devotion is the rocket that will take us to the moon of our delight. God bless you.
I'll also share a few words today because we both will share today because we don't often come. So this is really a fabulous topic, but before I begin, I did want to take a moment to thank all of you who helped make this weekend so beautiful, and Asha and Shanti who planned it and hosted us, and Ananda Prem who created the marvelous art exhibit, and then all of you who, I know there's many, many hands that make a miracle like this, the music and so forth. So thank you all. We've just enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. So with this topic, by thinking, can we come to understanding? James reminded me that some years ago, I was giving a talk. I didn't remember this, but I quoted someone as saying, if you think you can think your way to God, think again. So, good to remember that. But there's a phrase in the passage that was read so beautifully from Rays of the One Light. Fixity of purpose, born of devotion, is the way to find God. And that's such an important concept because we can, you see many people go, it's like a straw fire devotion, it burns brightly for a moment, but you need both the fixity of purpose and then the devotion that keeps that fire burning. And that's the way to spiritual growth. There's a marvelous little story that Swamiji would tell us of a mother squirrel who had a nest built up in a tree right along the seashore. And one day, and she had in her nest little baby squirrels, and she was taking care of them. And then a big storm came, and the winds blew the nest out of the tree, and all the little babies were washed out to sea. And the little mother squirrel looked at the ocean and climbed down from the tree, and she said, "Give me back my babies." And the ocean just did what it does. And then she said, I am going to use my little tail, and I'm going to dip it in the water and then run out on the beach and shake the drops up till I dry the ocean up, and you give me back my babies. And there she began, day after day after day. And finally, the ocean seeing the fixity of purpose born of devotion to her babies, the little babies washed back on the shore. It was a beautiful little story. And it reminded me also of a joke that someone told me recently, a Jewish friend of mine. I was born in a Jewish family, and I had the most marvelous, loving, understanding mother one could hope for. But the stereotype of a Jewish mother is there, whether we like it or not. And so this is the story of a Jewish mother who is walking along the seashore with her 10-year-old boy, and they're strolling along, and then a big wave comes, just like with the mother squirrel, and washes her son out to sea. And this Jewish mother looks up at the sky and she said, "God, don't you have a brain? You took my son away. That's my only son. You'd give him back." And then even the ocean, even God can't resist the power of a Jewish mother. A wave came and washed him back, and the little boy was standing there just perfectly safe and sound. And the mother looked at him and looked up at heaven and said, "He was wearing a hat?" And it's a wonderful story, but the point behind it is what we love, we fix on, and we give it everything we've got. And Jyotish spoke of some ways to develop love, but another way that has been very meaningful in my life is when I first began reading Autobiography of a Yogi. I was in college at the time, and I had it was my last semester, sharing an apartment with 2 other girlfriends. And one afternoon, it was a lovely spring afternoon, and the sun was coming in the windows, and my girlfriends were gone, and so I was just alone in the house. And I had been reading Autobiography of a Yogi, and I put it down. And then, for some reason, my mind started thinking about all the love that I had been fortunate enough to receive in my lifetime. My mother, my father, my brother, my extended family of cousins and aunts and uncles, wonderful friends. And with each, I paused and I thought about all of those things in a way I hadn't ever thought of them before, because I realized how special they were and what a gift they were. And with each, as it got bigger and bigger, and then I thought of wonderful teachers I had had in my schooling, and I hadn't yet come to Ananda or met Swami Kriyananda, and just beginning, I can't say I considered myself a disciple even, but that love was so powerful, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And then I just sat in it for a while. And it was this incredible peace that just came over me. And I looked at my watch, and more than an hour had gone by. And I was just lost in the contemplation of the love that I had received in my life. And so I invite each of you to do that. We've all received love in some form, in some way. Maybe it wasn't the way that we had hoped it would be, but nevertheless, think about the love you've received in your life, and then step back. Just as when Master lost his mother, he was bereft for so long, and then finally he prayed to see her again until he felt his heart would burst. And she came in vision, and he heard her voice saying, "Always have I loved thee, ever have I loved thee. I came to thee in this lifetime in the form of that mother, but I've come as many mothers through many incarnations." Don't just say, "Oh, you lost your mother." No, Divine Mother's love is always there. And so to awaken the love for God, we need to take baby steps and think about the love we've received in our life. That's the building stones. Just as Jyotish said, you can drive and then you get to the rocket. You receive love from a friend or a brother or whatever it might be, and then that's what love is. Let me make it bigger. Let me depersonalize it. It's not just a one-on-one thing. It exists, free and unencumbered by any personal expression. That love is just there, and we swim in it. And as Sri Yukteswar said in the Holy Science, very erudite book, the last sentence is, one cannot put one foot in front of the other, take one step on the spiritual path without the heart's natural love. And so don't forget it, friends. Open your heart, accept the love you've been given, and then try to depersonalize it and let that love flow out to everyone. Once a man visited Master, and he was a very highly respected, very spiritually quite evolved, but he was in his head too much. And Swami said later the man was Paul Master didn't say the name, but Swami said it was the author Paul Brunton, who wrote a number of books about travels in Tibet and India. But he had an interview with Master, a meeting with Master, and he was asking all these intellectual questions about the spiritual path. And Master said very quietly, love God. And that wasn't enough for him. So he persisted and he asked some more intellectual questions. And Master said more strongly, love God. And still he didn't get the point. And he went through one more round of asking questions. Well, what is the difference between Nirvikalpa Samadhi and Sabhikalpa Samadhi, and on and on. And finally Master said with great force, love God. And he walked out of the room, Master did. And the man told later, he said, I think Yogananda, he's losing it. He just couldn't answer any of my questions, my brilliant questions. But he was trying to get him to understand by thinking. You won't arrive at understanding. It's only when the heart is open. And Swami Kriyananda was he was a brilliant man, a brilliant mind, a creative genius, but the heart of a loving child. One of the first moments where I glimpsed this, he was taking a group of us from Ananda to go into Ananda village, go into Nevada City to see a movie. And I had only seen him as a teacher. I hadn't seen him as a person too much. And so the movie we were going to see, it surprised me, was Walt Disney's Swiss Family Robinson. You may have seen it. It's a charming movie. And so we all filed into the movie theater, and as it turned out, I was sitting next to him, and I couldn't put it together, this great yogi and direct disciple of Yogananda, and he's taking us to see Swiss Family Robinson. And so I just said very quietly, during the movie I watched him, and he was enwrapped. He was just totally enwrapped. And I couldn't help it, but I said, Swamiji, are you enjoying this movie? And he got a big smile on his face. He said, oh yes, I've seen it 7 times. And it's about people overcoming obstacles and building community. And that's, I think, why he liked it, but in a very charming story. But that ability to say, I may go far, farther than the farthest star. I might write 150 books and 400 pieces of music. But as Swami said to us, at the end of my life, I just want people to think of me that he was a good disciple, that he loved his guru with all his heart. And that's the goal for all of us. Whatever we accomplish in this life, the world may praise us, the world may denounce us. It doesn't matter. The world doesn't really get what's going on. But the love of the heart will be our guide. And when you read but it gives you the fixity of purpose to continue. And when you read of the lives of great saints of all religions, they were tested to the core, without question. But what gave them the ability in the midst of whatever hardships and denunciation they were going through to say, God, I will never give up. I search for you. I will never give up. I will never lessen my love for you. It was the fixity of purpose born of devotion. So awaken that love in your heart. Life isn't worth living without it. It's quite a hollow shell without the opening up of the heart. And it doesn't have to be even in a human level. It can be with plants. You read of Luther Burbank that the school is going to be doing a wonderful play with soon. Love of plants and nature, that was his path to God. It can be with animals and just awakening that love in your heart. It can be with so many different things. But without it, life is dry, and the spiritual path gets more and more dry and unattractive. With love for God, it is ever new, ever expansive joy. And so if your heart is seeking something more in life than just what we get that the world has to offer, learn with all your being to love God and to share that love with everyone with whom you come in contact. God bless you.
Mother of wisdom, mercy and grace, grant us thy vision, grant us thy peace. Wisdom, turning from God, we've wandered alone. So many years we've boasted but madness. Now our souls call